Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the City Council study session of Tuesday, April 11th. I now call the meeting to order. Would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag Okay. So how many of you do you think are going to do the public comment? Okay. All right, just trying to assess. So we'll go for 3 minutes, I think is okay. Oh, you got to do roll call. Yeah, do roll call, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Councilmember Chavez.
Here.
Councilmember Gameros. Councilmember Harper. Councilmember Reynolds. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Harlan.
Here.
Oh, Councilmember Marr. Sorry. Mayor Stevens.
Here. Okay, so sometimes we do 2 minutes, sometimes we do 3 minutes, but you don't have to go all three, but we'll let you do 3 minutes because it looks like there's about 10 people that want to speak, and that's fine. So on a study session, you can talk about anything that's on the calendar or on the agenda, and the agenda is the capital improvement program for 23-24. So please confine your comments to that topic. You get 3 minutes. If you have to do your public comment through an interpreter, you get 5 minutes. And so we'll first go to the folks that are in the chambers, then we'll go on Zoom. If you're on Zoom and you wish to speak, press the hand raise or *9. We call your number, press *6. Okay, so let's start over here with Flo. And then the other thing too is, just so you know, unlike a normal meeting where we're calling each other by our last names, we call each other by our first names. It's a lot more casual. We're dressed more casual. So at a normal meeting, you'd see more ties and everybody would be calling me the mayor instead of John, okay? Yes, Flo, you have the floor.
I would like to thank you, as my sons used to say in Indian Guides, heap good. The CRP projects that we have been reviewing with the active transportation plan, and which I reviewed this afternoon, puts a lot of good emphasis and big bucks into maintaining our streets, maintaining safety for all users in public spaces, and for improving and maintaining our parks. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, good evening. My name's Amy. I'm one of the moms who started the petition and collected 350 signatures along with a group of other awesome moms. And I wanted to thank City Council for increasing the budget for Brentwood Park from 250 to 400. We just want some good equipment for our kids. We're not asking to make it a destination playground or park. We just want some good usable equipment that serves the community and all the families that use it, and not just a select few individuals who use it. And so we want to thank you for including it in this year's SIPS budget. Thank you. All right, so do you want to go?
Thank you. Oh, sorry, did you want to say, you still have time, yeah.
Oh, well, my daughter would like to
Oh, that's great.
read a passage.
Wonderful.
Can you tell everybody who's it about?
It's about Malala.
Malala.
It's hard to get things done in this world, but you try, and you have to continue, and you never give up.
Thank you.
Okay?
Okay.
Top that.
All right. Good evening, John.
Yes.
As usual, I'm advocating for the tennis center. The tennis center should have a much higher priority, I think. For many years, it's needed LED lighting, which I know is on the budget for a bunch of the other parks that we have. And so it's in sore need of remodeling and additions to the tennis center building. And needs a locker room, it needs the bathrooms improved. And perhaps the project for expanding the skate park, which is next door, could incorporate the same building. I think an administration building for the skate park is needed. If it becomes bigger, it needs to be supervised more, and maybe we can have some park people there on staff all the time for the skate park. The active transportation subject matter, the biking and walking improvements in the budget are greatly appreciated. I appreciate that some of the improvements are getting done with all the repaving work, but a lack of funding, such as grants, et cetera, are holding up projects on Adams, Fairview at the high school and Orange Coast College, Bristol in the South Coast Plaza and Sobeka area, as well as a long list of missing links throughout the city. So to meet the challenges of urbanizing and making the city more bikeable and walkable, we need to start contracting with consultants for obtaining funding and for the management services for all the projects coming up in the next 4 or 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Hello, my name's Christina, and I'm here in support of the Brentwood Park updates and wanted to echo Amy's sentiment and thanking you for increasing the budget to $400,000. We're really hoping that this park can be fully funded and the initiative move forward this year. I come to share a point of view from a couple local residents and just to reiterate the need for park improvements. The first one comes from Julia, and she shared that she lives a few blocks from Brentwood Park and she has a 3-year-old son who she frequently takes to this park. He loves the playground, however, when she takes him to Brentwood, she finds herself spending more time in the grassy area or sand rather than enjoying the playground equipment itself. The equipment at Brentwood Park is very outdated compared to many of the parks in the area. Most of the playground equipment currently at the park is not suitable for young children. Receiving funding from the city would allow for the creation of a more inviting, fun, and safe space for our kids to play. I am hoping to see some more swings, slides, climbing structures, and age-appropriate equipment for kids of all ages. As an occupational therapist, it is also very important to me for the new playground to be more accessible from the street/sidewalk and inclusive to encourage engagement and participation by kids with disabilities. After moving to this neighborhood from Santa Monica, we were so thankful to have found such a strong, close-knit community with so many kids. This park is a meeting area for many parents and children in our community to play and to host sites of many events organized by our neighbors, such as our annual Halloween costume contest. Providing the funding to renovate Brentwood Park would allow for so many kids to be able to enjoy the new playground equipment and encourage kids to spend more time outdoors. A renovated playground would also allow for our kids in the community to develop increased gross motor control, safety, and body awareness. Unfortunately, she's out of town, so she asked that I share this email on her behalf. The next one comes from Ryan Burke. He shares, "My name is Ryan, and I'm a local Eastside Costa Mesa resident." Do I get 3 minutes, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
You get one more.
To the extent that discretionary budget is available for this fiscal year, I am fully in favor of upgrading our Brentwood Park infrastructure as a priority for this year. The next two come from local moms. The first one is Elaine. "Hello, I have lived in Costa Mesa the last 8 years and have been taking my daughter there since she was 9 months old. She is now 7. It is such a great location for meeting other families and kids. We have had great memories here, but it definitely can use some attention and an upgrade. We now have a 16-month-old and would love for a safer space for him and the younger kids to play, where all can enjoy." The next one comes from Katie. "Hi, we are homeowners in Eastside Costa Mesa and so blessed to call this place our home. We have 2 little girls and are always at the park. We would all benefit from an update park to continue to bring our kids, especially swings. Our 2-year-old lives on those. Let's keep our city and neighborhoods kept up to continue to bring in new families and bring families together. We all take so much pride in where we live. Thank you so much, and I really hope we can fully fund this project."
Thank you. Yeah, yes, sir.
Mayor Stevens, Mr. Harlan, Councilor Barlow, and council members, thank you very much for letting me speak. I have a prepared statement, real short. Dear City Council, I'm writing on behalf of my 3 granddaughters, which are here, who live within walking distance of Brentwood Park. As a service-disabled Vietnam veteran, the park and its playground offer several deterrents for individuals like me with mobility issues who can't easily sit down or traverse the uneven terrain. Can you please include some ADA-compliant bench seating and a pathway from Monte Vista to access the playground? This is Brentwood Park, I apologize. And more importantly, can you add some fun, engaging equipment so the playground doesn't, in the words of my eldest granddaughter, suck so much. Sorry about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sean. I'm a Costa Mesa resident. I'm here to support the Brentwood Park Initiative. And when I look at the parks of Costa Mesa, there's a lot of really nice playgrounds like Tanager Park, Tewinkle Park, Vista. They're really nice. Then when you get to Brentwood Park, it's kind of like you're going back to like the 1970s. There's no swings. There's not really anywhere to sit. And so I would just want to emphasize my support for the initiative to make a more modern playground. There's a lot of families in that neighborhood, and so I think it would be a great initiative for the council to vote on.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, City Council. Andy Campbell, Chairman of the Fairview Park Steering Committee, also speaking as a private citizen. Want to just express how elated I am to see the amount of money that's being spent in Fairview Park, or at least budgeted in Fairview Park for the coming fiscal year. I would like to ask you to think about one particular project, though, that I think might be misguided. There's a pump station recirculation, and what that pump station will do, I wrote you a letter about, but what that pump station solves is your water supply, but it doesn't solve any of the other issues that are plaguing that wetlands. And so in my day job, I'm a water facilities manager for Inland Empire Utilities Agency, and we have a park very similar to the wetlands park. It's called the Chino Creek Wetlands Park. It's 22 acres, 7 ponds, gravity-fed or flowed ponds, very similar to the ponds in Fairview Park. And the way that pond has been successful is the water goes in and the water goes out. I think that's something that the city ought to consider for the wetlands park and not spend $500,000 on a pump station that could potentially harm the wetlands and give you annual energy costs. So I'd like to invite you all, if you want to come out to Chino, I'd be happy to give you a tour of the park. And I think it's a great example of what the wetlands here at Fairview Park could be. Also want to advocate for the committee. Our mission is to really give advice to the council on capital improvement projects with relation to AA. And the recirculation pump station has not been to the Fairview Park Steering Committee yet. And so I think it's a project that could get through AA, but as currently envisioned, it looks like on its face like it's a large pump station in a park, which is going to save the money, save water bills for the city and not really solve our problem. So if there's a project that you want our advice on, I'd appreciate it if it could come to the committee. One, I think it's a little bit later in the budget, is a storm drain project in Fairview Park, and everybody in the steering committee would love to see successful projects in Fairview Park. Would like to be involved at the beginning. The last thing I think we want to see is a project come to us that we're like, where did this come from? And we don't think it's appropriate. So appreciate for that consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, yes.
Hi, I'm Megan, and these are my 3 kiddos. We're here in support of the Brentwood Park as well. We just want to echo our thanks to the budget for it. We're super excited about the potential of an area for the little one to play safely, where we don't have to be worried about him falling on the hills or running towards the street. And my girls are this one, oh, where is she? My little 5-year-old has just learned how to swing, and we are constantly traveling to different parks so that she can find a swing, and it would be lovely to have one in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Anybody else from the chambers?
Hi, thank you for hearing me. My name's Mike. I'm a grandpa as well. I'm here to support Brentwood Park, and I agree with a lot of the speakers here that it would be really nice to see money spent on a new design that incorporates nice pathways, maybe some more fun for the kids, a little diversity on the way that the different different items that the kids can enjoy and stuff like that. I do think it needs an update, and it would be nice to see that. And I appreciate the budget and the room for parks. When I was raising my kids, the kids played outdoors a lot more than they do now. So I think in this day and age, it's really nice to do whatever we can to encourage some physical activity outdoors. And it's really nice that the city has done so on a lot of parks throughout the city, and it'll be nice to see Brentwood follow suit. So I just wanted to thank you for that, and it would be very nice to see some pathways and some places to sit and some shaded elements as well. So thanks again, we appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see anybody else coming up. Madam Clerk, do we have somebody on Zoom?
Yes, the first speaker is Katie Crawford, please.
Ms. Crawford, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. My name's Katie Crawford, and I live next to Brentwood Park. I have 2 kids, and I just wanted to say, as a neighbor who lives next to the park, I am in support of updating the playground equipment so that our kids have a really fun, safe, and ADA compliant structures to play on. But I am not in favor of expanding the play area to the point that people who live outside of our neighborhood or walking area drive and park and come to play. We've seen this happen at local parks like Mariners and Tewinkle, and the noise and traffic and speeding, running of stop signs, littering, and crowded street parking is inevitable. The updated parks that we've seen in Mesa Verde and on the west side typically have parking lots attached to them for visitors. We do not have that here at Brentwood Park. If we expand the play area, making this a destination park, visitors will be parking in front of our homes. In addition, if you have driven by a lot of those mentioned parks that I talked about above, including Tanager, you know that there are people who loiter there after hours, and I know that's not something that we want in Brentwood Park. Even if you don't live right next to the park, I know that's not something we want in our neighborhood. The plans and renderings that have been circulating throughout the neighborhood really does change Brentwood from being a neighborhood park to a destination. It over triples the playground size. It includes multiple swing sets, sitting areas, climbing structures. That being said, I would love to meet and talk about my concerns, hear all of the ideas for playground plans. I know that there was a petition that was circulated gaining input, and it was very heavily in favor of updating the park. I asked my over 114 neighbors on an ongoing email chain if anyone had seen this petition, anyone that lives right next to the park, and they had not seen it. And I think that this is because people who live directly around the park, their daily lives will be affected by the increase in attendance and all the things that come with that. Again, I would love to update the playground, and I know that it needs it. I want to make it safe. I want to make it fun. I want to make it engaging, but we need to be careful about how we do it and not negatively affect the neighbors in the area. To be clear, I am for updating the playground and against the expansion of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Lynn Tui, please.
Lynn, you have the floor.
Hello, my name is Lynn Tui. I am also a neighbor of Brentwood Park. My house overlooks the park, specifically the play structure. I have 2 high school girls who have grown up at that park, and they have played out there and continue to be out there with their friends. I too am in favor of upgrading the park equipment. I would recommend it be similar to what the city did with Pinkley Park, where you fix the structure and make that ADA compliant and new with the shade and all of that. I thought that turned out really well. But I am also completely opposed to any expansion of the playground, including the barbecues, the lighting, all the things the benches, because this brings in the homeless crowd. There's been people shooting up in that park since the benches were installed. There's been a significant uptick in trash. There's a serious parking problem. And if this becomes a destination park, then none of the residents and our elderly parents don't have a place to park to see their grandkids. So I am similar to the Crawfords. I am very much in favor of fixing that existing structure and updating it and making it fun and safe for all the kids in the neighborhood and the area. But I am against any sort of expansion. And I too would love to be included on talks about ways to improve the park. And as the city knows, this was already discussed with the neighbors and approved as a open green space back in 2008 with the budget approved with that. And they did the phase one when they bought out the private school. And then the market crashed and the city never followed through on that original 260,000 park expansion to make it a big open green space beyond phase one. So phase two, they took a bunch of input from the neighbors. We had a lot of conversations about basketball courts, lighting, tennis courts, bathrooms, all sorts of comments and public meetings were held on this way back, and it was all agreed upon on what the plan was going to be. And I would like to stick to the original plan. Thank you.
Next speaker is Marissa Swain, please.
Marissa, you have the floor.
Marissa, if you could please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Marisa Swain. I am a resident on Fairway Drive, which is in the neighborhood of Brentwood Park. I am a proponent of updating the equipment, and I've listened to the comments thus far. I've raised 3 children living in that neighborhood and going to that park on a frequent basis. I felt it was appropriate for my infants to play on the grass and in the sand and blow bubbles and interact with them. As they got older, we played on the slides and found different ways to play using the grass area very heavily. When the school was removed, we continued to be able to run with kites and do things that were interactive with my kids. I feel that what is being proposed is going to attract a lot of unnecessary persons in our park, in our neighborhoods. And since the addition of those benches, I've called the police many times of people passed out or doing shady business while I'm trying to play with my elementary school child in the park or the dog on the leash. It's very unattractive. So I have grave concern that the expansion will bring this type of people to our neighborhood. So I agree with the playground needing some updated work and to be enjoyable for children to play on with the supervision of their parents. I continue to go to the park with my son, and he plays in there every day. So whoever was saying that kids aren't outside enough, come near Brentwood Park. You'll see a group of boys playing on that free grass area, soccer, baseball, football, whatever their imagination has, they'll do it there. If we start to make things that are attracting people that want to drive, as it was noted, you'll take the parking spots of our neighborhood away from us that live there. Thank you very much.
Next speaker, phone number ending in 024.
Zero 024, you have the floor.
Let's go to the next one. Cynthia McDonald, please.
Cynthia, you have the floor.
Good evening, Cynthia McDonald, Costa Mesa resident. I support the recommendations by the Active Transportation Committee. We need a grid of bikeways that will encourage folks to get out of their cars, but that only happens if the facilities make us feel safe. I don't support spending $50K on more bike racks unless those racks are located closer to facilities. Putting racks on the roadway away from the owner's eyes means that they won't be used for bicycles and they'll become nothing more than street art. I hope the city will focus on projects that will actually get done. There are a lot of projects that just seem to stay on the CIP list for years. One project I continue to hope you pay attention to is the tennis center, because I want to get my grandson out on the courts. It would be great if you could make improvements that would allow us to get that tournament back that we lost after hosting it for so many years. That means a first aid room and locker rooms, so we don't have to change our clothes in our cars or the disgusting bathrooms. I like the recommendation of combining that project with enlarging the skate park, as skaters often need first aid, and they come into the pro shop looking for ice when they need much more than that in the way of help. And then there are the long promised lighting upgrades to the tennis center. This is an opportunity to bring a first-class tennis center to Costa Mesa, similar to those in Irvine and Mission Viejo. I hope you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jacqueline Dressau, please.
Jacqueline, you have the floor.
Hi, this is Jacqueline Dresso. I am calling in support of the Brentwood Park Improvement Project. I have 3 children and I live very close to the park. We used to take our kids there a lot, but to be frank, the equipment isn't that exciting for the kids. The sand the current sand is kind of gross, and we would love to have a neighborhood park that is great for our 3 children to play and grow up on. So, and I also want to thank Amy and everyone else that was involved in this Brentwood Park project. Thank you for so much for all your hard work supporting this project. And we are really excited and we're really hopeful that Brentwood Park will be approved, as the residents have been working really hard for. Thank you.
Next speaker, Robert Toribio.
Hello. Thank you for taking the time, City Council, this evening. My name is Bob Tribio. I am a neighbor of Brentwood Park, and along with some of the other people you've heard this evening, I am all for a new play structure. However, I am completely against expanding the park. In the area between Brentwood and Fairway, there are at least 38 kids that live in this unique kind of pocket neighborhood right here. And increased traffic with barbecues and expanding the park put those kids in greater danger. The 2400 block of Fairway Drive is already a very tight street. Having more cars come into this neighborhood would be extremely dangerous. Once again, I would completely support a new play structure. However, any expansion to the park is not a very good idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Susan Turan.
Susan, you have the floor.
Hi, my name is Susan Theron, and I am also a resident of Brentwood Park. I actually live across the street from the park. And just like my neighbors, I am completely for renovating the playground area, but I'm very much against the expansion plan as it was given. We have a number of children that live in the area that use the open green spaces on a regular basis. If you're there between 4 and 6, almost every day, you'll see parents, you'll see fathers, you'll see kids running around playing kickball, playing soccer. Over in the other flat area on the other side, I know that there's kids that are doing flag football practice. There's picnics in the pavilion, and the green space allows a lot of that play area. And I feel the expansion will take that away from our kids. And I also have concerns about parking. I don't know if you've done a parking study. Some of the other high-use parks have parking attached. We live in a small neighborhood. This is going to have a huge impact in some narrow streets in our neighborhood. And I fear for our kids being at risk. I also fear for the transients that might be attracted. And I don't know if you're aware, but Newport Mesa has a bus stop on the Monte Vista side of the park. So I would be concerned about that as well. So once again, I'm for renovating the structure, but not the expansion. Thank you.
Okay, phone number ending in 773. Phone number ending in 773, please.
Yeah, hi, this is Glenn Frank. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm a resident of Brentwood Street, just across from the park as well. And for those residents that haven't been here for a long time, I just wanted to point out that after the last time this project was put on hold, the playground equipment actually was upgraded and there was new rubber base put in over some of the sand. So if you think it's bad now, it's actually pretty good. I'm not going to repeat what everybody else said. I'm in favor of limited expansion. Parking is an issue. This place is heavily used on weekends especially. But I wanted to take a couple of more tactical approaches. There's three things that I want to mention. In some of the areas near Brentwood Street where there is curves and hills and little valleys, some of the area has turned to dirt. And maybe spend some of the budget on looking at some grading or doing something to make that more playable so it doesn't turn to dirt. One other thing is that the lawn maintenance teams have rideable mowers and they cut so low that they are cutting into the dirt in a lot of the similar areas where there's little hills and valleys. And I think it contributes to the creation of that dirt where the kids play. And the last thing I want to mention is probably the most important. I think there's a significant liability to the city for the pine trees along Brentwood Street. They are massive. I've talked to the arborist multiple times over the years, and I'm told they cannot be topped, and it usually results in a slight amount of trimming along Brentwood Street. But I'm reminded of, the woman that was crushed to death on Irvine Avenue in Newport when a eucalyptus tree fell on it. These trees are massive, and I'd hate to have trees removed, but sometimes that might be a solution and something else planted. I really think the city needs to take a look at those trees in terms of issues with life playing in the park, as well as property when it comes to cars and houses that might be impacted because they are so huge. Well, thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Next speaker is James Wright.
Mr. James, you have the floor.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I'll keep this pretty quick. I'm a neighbor. I live right across the street from the park on the Brentwood side with my two kids and wife. Anyway, I just wanted to call and say that, we were a little bit surprised by the news of all of this, but wanted to, voice support for what Katie Crawford and Bob Turborough were all saying about, we kind of definitely appreciate the need to upgrade the playground structure, but haven't really been sold on the need to expand the park and all the other facilities. We definitely appreciate the open space. The kids seem to love it. There's usually a ton of young kids there with nannies and people all throughout the day. They get to play football and baseball and all kinds of stuff. So some of the comments I heard earlier about it being a throwback to the 70s, in a way, it's kind of charming and unique and what makes it special. So anyway, have a good night, everybody, and thanks for giving me the chance to speak.
Next speaker is Mariah McDaniel.
Who is it?
Mariah McDaniel.
Mariah, you have the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much for taking the time. I also am a neighbor of Brentwood Park. I live on the 2400 block of Fairway, which directly neighbors it. And I just want to echo what Katie Crawford had mentioned very specifically earlier, that I am in support of a new play structure and improvements such as that to the park, but not expansion of it. I also have two little boys, an 11-year-old and a 7-year-old, which play at the park daily and whom I trust to walk around the corner to the park by themselves. It's a very safe neighborhood where, as mentioned before, kids are out every day, families are out every day utilizing the park. And I just think with increased having a destination park, I will no longer have that safety. I would worry about the unhoused population utilizing it. And just changing that charming bit about our park. And also our family recently did a complete renovation on our home. And part of the appraisal process for that was the aspect that the park was quieter and it wasn't a destination park. And that went into our home's value. And I would think would go into all the other neighboring homes' value directly neighboring the park. And that's also tax money that goes to the city. So I think that that's something to consider as well. So again, just want to state that I am all in favor of a new play structure, but don't want to jeopardize the integrity of what the park is today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Emily Cohen.
Emily.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry. My name is Emily Cohen, and I also live in the neighborhood. My kids grew up going to Brentwood Park daily with myself and our nanny. And I just want to echo what Katie Crawford and Mariah McDaniel and Bob Trivio all said. The park is a haven for our kids, and to add the barbecues and expansion would really be a disservice to our little neighborhood park. I'm definitely in favor of updating the play structure and making it a little bit neater and cleaner, but to expand it and turn it into Mariners Park is not something that I think our sweet neighborhood would benefit from. So I would just like to put my 2 cents in, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Next speaker is John Crawford.
John, you have the floor.
Hey, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it. Like many people on this call, we live in the Brentwood Park neighborhood, and I'm all in favor of a new play structure. I could see how that park would really benefit from it. I'm also in favor of kids playing outside. Of course, they benefit from the physical activity and from the exercise. 100%. We've seen that as we've lived in the neighborhood, with our son, with our daughter, and all of our neighboring friends. Massive concerns, parking and traffic have come up quite a bit. And I want to make sure that I echo those, second those, third those. Parking can be an issue already in its current form at Brentwood Park, but you go to Mariners on the weekend, you look at parking, you look at trash, you try to throw anything away at Mariners Park on a Saturday afternoon, the trash bins are overflowing. And that overflow just goes into the park. Certainly don't want that at Brentwood Park. I think the other part too is we live near that park 24 hours a day. We live at that park at midnight, at 4 a.m. When everyone else is home, we're still dealing with the park, and we're dealing with the park. And you can ask the Costa Mesa PD. I would imagine that the majority of the calls that they receive are after dark when there are no kids at that park. So from sunrise to sunset, all good. Like we need the updated play structure, and we love the green belt that we have back there, and certainly the kids have benefited from it. But that park after hours with that many other attractions and that much more being that much more of a destination park and an attraction to others is recipe for trouble. So thank you for your call. Appreciate it. Or thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Kara.
Kara, you have the floor.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Kara Weepropasorn, and I've lived in the neighborhood for over 20 years. I live across the street, but, and have also lived on Fairway. And I have 3 children, 10, 8, and 3. And I am all in favor of the park update. It absolutely is necessary, and I appreciate that the city is considering this, and I'm all for it. I do want to just encourage the city to communicate what we're, more with the neighborhoods. I think a lot of people, including myself, are confused. Has a plan been approved? Is this destination park, or is this, are there bathrooms? I think a lot of people are just having a lot of or misunderstanding, or just are confused. Is this something that is already happening, or is this something? I think a good example to really look at is how you guys handled the Perez Park on, Del Mar and Santa Ana. There was so much communication. There was so much voting and surveying and involvement from the neighborhood. And I think that's what's really key here, is that we open up the dialogue and start the conversations and ask the neighbors and ask those who are using it near and far what they want, and really involve others. I think that's key because I think, as you can hear, majority really do want this updated. And I think now it's just time to listen and figure out exactly what that means going forward. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Mike and Rosie, please.
Okay, there. Hello.
Hi.
Mike and I have lived here on Brentwood Street for 45 plus years. We live next door to the park. We raised our 3 children here, and now our 3 grandchildren are enjoying the park. We do support the upgrades, obviously, for the playground. We moved here in the 70s, and yes, there was a barbecue, there was a water fountain, but all of that had to be removed after people were using it as keeping them warm or using it as a bathing station. So I would prefer never to have a water fountain or a barbecue at the park again. We've had to call the police on multiple occasions with different problems in the middle of the night, like the previous caller said. We do have to live with this day in and day out 24/7 with those that are using the park when it's closed. I'm in favor of upgrading the playground. Obviously, the shelter over the picnic tables obviously is rotting out. There are a few upgrades, the trees like our neighbor had mentioned, but the purpose of a park is to have open green space, from what I understand. And to me, having a more open green space rather than an overbuilt park is what Brentwood needs to keep it open green space. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
No further speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Then you want to be heard, sir?
Yes. Oh,
That's all right. You could take the mic. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Bob Stum. I live directly across the street from the park also, and I agree about updating what's existing and a few extra trees like Rosie mentioned and a lot of other stuff. I'm not going to beat a dead horse here.
Yeah.
If you do this and more come, we already have to deal with it on a daily basis. I shouldn't say daily, weekly. Don't want to deal with it daily, okay? Don't want to involve PD and all that stuff with it. We take care of it actually kind of locally to make everything work, make sure it's clean. I personally go walk my dog in the morning. I talk to the people that come to the park, that pick everything up, that take care of stuff. I call people from the city, hey, we need a new volleyball net. They come out and they put it in, lights, this and that and the other thing. We're very involved with our park, our local park, okay? And we invite everybody locally to come visit and use it. Use the heck out of it. Birthday parties, everything. Okay. Do have an issue though. Just to let you know, Jeff, I sent you an email, if you saw it, anyway. Brentwood Park residents, we feel sandbagged by you guys, honestly. You've had our phone numbers, our emails for a dozen years at least to talk about things like this, to work them out before they turn into, hey, more or less, all this stuff, okay? To come to an amicable agreement, just like the park that was, I'm forgetting the name, the one for the toddlers that was done very close by. Anyway, here's something to think about. Somebody mentioned it a little bit, but while refinancing our home a couple years ago, I was talking to the appraiser that was coming out, right? And he said, hey, you got a park next to us? I go, yeah, it's a really nice park. I go, he goes, I know. Or he didn't say I know. I said, I know. And he said, parks can be good or parks can be bad, okay, for property values. And he unequivocally told me that if I come out and I find it's busy and this, that, and the other thing, your refi number is going to go down, okay? So property values will go down, okay? Because what goes up, traffic, crime, the homeless stuff, all that, everything everybody's already mentioned. We would really appreciate you talking to us, besides everyone else, about the entire picture of that small park. It's not a big park. It's just not. And I don't think it's ready for all of that. I do agree with,
Thank you. Now, you're done. You got only get 3 minutes.
okay.
Okay?
I agree
So,
with the update of the playground, but not the total picture.
all right, thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You bet. So, we're done with public comment. Now, Madam Clerk, please read the title.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, of course.
before we go to the meat of what we're here to talk about, since we have so many people listening in on the Brentwood Park issue specifically, I was wondering if maybe the Mayor Pro Tem could just baseline where we're at and why. So, because I feel like the public is a little confused about what it is we're talking about tonight, and I'd rather clarify that now than wait 2 hours.
No, I appreciate that, and you're right, it is timely. So tonight's items are just about budgeting for capital improvements. Brentwood Park is among those several projects, I think 46 that are listed. It has been in the queue for upgrading for over 15 years at this point. So there is no plan that has been approved, at least by this body, for Brentwood Park. The last one that was actually approved by City Council was, I think, in 2009 or 2008, which is a much more extensive master plan that was never implemented. The purpose tonight is to consider having money put aside for essentially a light renovation of the park site. We haven't defined what the uses are going to be, what the full scope is. The budget is based on similar projects that have been done elsewhere in the city recently, including Tanager Park and Jordan Park. So we will be having community meetings and input. I live right around the corner from this park. I have a very long history of this park. I know neighbors are concerned and interested. We want to get people's input, but I just want to assure people nothing has been finalized as far as design is concerned.
Can I ask one question along the same lines?
Sure.
I appreciate you bringing that up, Andrea. But can you walk us through the process from agenda item approved to CIP budgeting to funding to finalization of a project, just in general, though, over the whole? But that can be helpful to understand. So, these items on here tonight, have they been approved on an agenda? Is there a plan? Is there funding? Just walk us through that whole thing, if you don't mind. Just so the public knows and we all know, if that's okay.
Roger, sure. We're in a
Mr.
study
Mayor,
session.
yeah, if
Go
you
ahead.
can. So, Councilman Harper, the way these projects start is we get requests from the residents, from council members, from different places, and we do budget them, or we do request budgeting as part of the CIP process. At this point, we are just asking for appropriation. So once it's appropriated, then it goes into a schedule. And when we initiate the project, we actually go through extensive community outreach process as part of the design. So
Roger, what's appropriation? What's that mean in context?
So appropriation means setting budget aside for the project.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's identified there is money set aside for this particular project from our funds.
So to set it aside to analyze the project, is that the first step?
So, as part of the initial phase is community outreach. We do talk to residents, and we go through a process of identifying what improvements can be made within the budget that we have, and what's acceptable, what's not acceptable to the residents, and we get their input.
I don't mean to interrupt, but that even comes before a council approval. That is just the city looking at a project, considering it before it comes to council approval.
Yes. Then it goes through. Then the playground. Actually, we take it through committee meetings. Then we go to Parks Commission for their review and approval, and then we come to council when it gets to award the project.
So what is on the CIP list right now is just appropriated, correct?
That's correct.
All right. That's helpful. Thank you.
Let me go ahead and just update. This is for the fiscal year 23-24 budget cycle. So this would start July 1st. So in essence, this is a budgetary planning that's before you for discussion tonight. It will come alongside with the budget in a public hearing for a potential June budget adoption night that will include the capital improvement projects that you're about to hear from Director Sethuraman tonight.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, of course.
So not to put too fine a point I don't know if I can do that. But really, this is the first step, right? I mean, not to put too fine of a point on it, but thinking about where we want to put our money and then voting in a couple of months on exactly where we're putting our money, and then starting the design process, and then starting community outreach, and then going through design process sometimes again, and then sometimes an additional budget allocation once we decide what we can actually afford with what budget. I mean, this is the most preliminary step one in the process. So the notion that we already have a design complete, I know there's some things circulating in the public, but from a city's perspective, this is where we start. Is that right, Mr. Sethuraman?
That's correct.
Thank you.
The people speaking on Brentwood Park, they got a long runway
We
to
got
come
a
and
long
talk.
way to go.
Right, that's what I wanted to clarify.
That's why I wanted to jump in and not make people wait 2 hours to hear that.
I think it's great.
Just to be clear with everyone in the public.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's still good to hear it early on. I mean, I appreciate all those comments, but you're right, Andrea. It's there's a long road to Brentwood Park. Okay, speaking of long roads, it's been a long road to read the title to this to this study session.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. This is a study session for consideration of the fiscal year 2023-24 proposed capital improvement program CIP budget and 5-year CIP. Presentation by Mr. Sethuraman, Public Works Director.
Okay, so now are we going to go to Lorianne? Is she going to say a few words, or are we going to go right to Raja?
A few words.
All right, good.
Good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the public. Tonight represents the first step in the deliberations, discussion, analysis, and presentation of the fiscal year 23-24 proposed budget. The budget that will be proposed to you next month will be a combination of both operating costs as well as the CIP, our capital improvement program. We're beginning this evening with the first part being the capital improvement program. And so as we've discussed this evening, this is a preliminary conversation. That's why it's in the study session format. You're not voting this evening. You're giving preliminary feedback to staff based on what's being recommended. Just to put a little bit finer point on some of the discussion here on the dais right now, the CIP usually reflects a culmination of a variety of different types of things. For one, it's comprised of many different funding sources, not just the general fund. And so there are restricted funds and grant funds that in some cases those projects are further along in terms of the design because we've actually submitted a grant to a higher level of government explaining the need for additional funding. It's something that's beyond our funding capabilities, and that's a type of project that might be further along. In some cases, a grant-funded project is more of a concept and idea, and so we still need to flesh that out. There are health and safety CIPs as well. On the facility side for the city, also community facing. And so Raja Sethuraman will present to you under the different categories and also which fund these capital projects pertain. But it's a menu of different options, some of them required also for state funding purposes. We'll broken it out into 2 phases, a phase 1 and phase 2, so that you'll see what's grant funded and what we're required to spend in order to receive some funding. So it's a much more unique type of program within the budget than even our operating expenses. A lot more complexity there and management of a lot of different restricted funding sources. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Raja.
Thank you, Lorianne. So good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, City Manager, staff, and community. So this evening, we are bringing you the capital improvement program portion of the budget to receive viewers and community input. The CIP process actually started back in December of last year, and after going through several internal deliberations, we have a draft program before you. Now, as a background, as our city manager mentioned, the capital improvement program, or CIP, is financed from various funding sources, and these include federal, state, county, local funds. The projects in the CIP, they require extensive coordination with both internal and external stakeholders. Just as, we talked about community input and also internally we have to go through purchasing process and city attorney review and all that. And they're subject to oversight and audit. For a project to be in CIP, it has to be over $30,000. So for smaller projects that we have many, they are grouped together under building maintenance projects. So unlike the rest of the operating budget, CIP projects are multi-year efforts and represent next round of council priorities. Many projects in the CIP take multiple years to complete as they involve several phases from initial project concept and go towards project completion. So we have design phase, we have bidding phase, in between we have community outreach, and then we go through contract selection, and then construction, and then completion. The CIP program before you includes ongoing projects as well as those that are proposed for the next fiscal year. Public Works team working with other departments is dedicated to deliver quality projects, and we have won many awards over the past few years for our projects. Most recently, we were awarded Outstanding Roadway Project by the American Society of Civil Engineers for the Randolph Avenue project, and we'll be accepting that award on May 4th. So happy to say that. So let's go to the current year CIP. Before we go to the next year, we want to just talk about, and actually let me talk about some of the other background too. So the public works projects right now, we are encountering significant challenges. We have issues with inflation. We have issues with contractor participation. The number of bids are not as many as we used to get before. We are facing worker shortages. Even the contractor that is working on a project sometimes doesn't staff it completely, and resulting in some delays. And these are issues that we are dealing with on a daily basis on our projects. But we continue to deliver and make progress on many of our projects. With that, I'll transfer to City Engineer Sung Yang to talk about some of the accomplishments of the current fiscal year.
Thank you, Mr. Sethuraman. Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and honorable members of the City Council, good evening. My name is Sung Yang, your city engineer. So it's my pleasure to discuss the current update for fiscal year 22-23 and some of the accomplishments and the ongoing projects that are going on. The first up is the citywide street improvements projects. During the last current fiscal year, streets were improved that included a combination of both slurry seal and full depth pavement rehabilitation. And during this time, we completed approximately 21 lane miles, which is equivalent to 111,700 lineal feet, which graphically, as you can see there, is the length from the I-405 from Route 22 to the I-5 freeway. So you can see graphically how significant of work that we've done here. And some of the streets that we've improved include Wilson Street, and also numerous residential streets north of Giesler Avenue, which is the Mesa Verde neighborhood. We're going to start the construction of Placentia Avenue, which is sometime in mid to late May. And currently we have maintained a very good PCI of 83.1. Now, in terms of funding, we've allocation of close to $9 million, and that comes from various funding sources, which includes gas tax, road maintenance and rehabilitation account, which is RMRA, CDBG, and capital improvement funds. So here's some pictures of some of the streets we've done. As I've mentioned, this is north of Giesler Avenue, and to the left is Iowa Street, and to your right is Minnesota Avenue, and you can see the before and after pictures, and they're quite significant. Next slide. So we've the major arterial collector street that's ongoing, but we're going to be nearing finishing is the Wilson Street Improvement Project from Newport Boulevard to Placentia Avenue. And we've done mill and overlay operations on that street with new pavement. And the next couple of weeks or so, we will finish it up with manhole adjustments and also striping and markings as well. Next slide. So the parkway projects, which include sidewalks and also concrete parkways such as driveways and curb ramps, we reconstructed approximately 50,000 square feet of new sidewalks. And that's equivalent to nearly one football field. And you can see that graphic as well. And that's how significant that of the amount of sidewalks that we've reconstructed during this current fiscal year. Other improvements, as I've mentioned before, that are included are new curbs and gutters, driveways, curb ramps, cross gutters, etc. And some of the notable areas of improvements include Monrovia Avenue, Placentia Avenue, West 19th Street, Wilson Street, and also Newport Boulevard and Industrial Way. The City Hall exterior paint project, we've pressure washed and removed peeling paint here at City Hall. We've done operations and priming and application of new paint, and we've incorporated a new color scheme that's eye-popping and very pleasing to the eye to people who are now seeing the new City Hall. In addition to that, we've improved the walkway canopies in front of City Hall, and also additionally at the police department as well. So talking about parkway improvements, here are some notable examples. To the left is Monrovia Avenue. We've created a brand new sidewalk which didn't exist before. The middle picture is Newport Boulevard and Industrial Way. And those are the new curb ramps that we installed at this intersection, as well as the bright yellow crosswalks markings as well. And to the right, we planted new trees along Placentia Avenue. So for HVAC installations, I now take that over to Mr. Rob Ryan, who is our Maintenance Services Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, City staff, members of the public. My name is Rob Ryan. I'm the Maintenance Services Division Manager. As Mr. Young mentioned, HVAC installations are our next project. Replaced heating, venting, and air conditioning systems at multiple city facilities, including the Costa Mesa Historical Society, City Hall Finance Department, Fire Station number 6, which is our Sakioka Fire Station, as well as the Downtown Recreation Center. The replacement of these units improved air circulation, air control, and improved energy efficiencies. Complete a few projects in the Lions Park area, including replastering a new tile, the pool at the Downtown Aquatic Center. We improved the back courtyard area at the Norma Herzog Community Center, which included new concrete patio, seating, as well as enhanced landscape and accent lighting. And finally, we completed the installation of some outdoor musical instruments. We had 6 musical instruments generously donated by friends of the library. And those were installed and laid out by the Public Works maintenance staff. Next, we have the Jack Hammett Sports Complex parking improvements. Increased parking, park lighting, security lighting. We added 5 storage units to the complex. We enhanced landscape as well as several decorative treatments. With that, I'll turn it over to our Transportation Manager, Jennifer Rosales.
All right, thank you. The next project that I'll talk about is the citywide residential permit parking program. The goal of this project is to provide equitable access, sustainable parking solutions, and efficient program management. In July, City Council approved the new residential permit parking program guidelines and associated changes to the municipal code. This expands permit eligibility to all households, which is consistent with the state attorney general opinion. We are currently in a phased implementation of the program, which is underway. This includes engaging in community outreach on the new program and implementation. We've launched an online portal to manage permits. We'll be implementing automated enforcement, and we're very excited to be rolling this out to residents of Costa Mesa. Next, we've installed bike racks in a variety of locations throughout the city, focusing on commercial areas this year. We've improved Class 2 bicycle facilities as well along California Street, and they will be on Wilson Street with the project Mr. Sung Yang just spoke about. We also have implemented Class 3 bicycle facilities along Royal Palm Drive, Tustin Avenue, and soon on Golf Course Drive. The citywide bicycle wayfinding signage design is underway and almost complete. Designs that were completed over the past, in this fiscal year, the Adams Pine Creek Active Transportation intersection project design was complete, which includes pedestrian and bicycle improvements and Class 1 multi-use paths. Also, the Adams Avenue bicycle facility will be complete from Fairview to Harbor, which includes Class 2 bicycle lanes, Class 2 buffered bike lanes, as well as Class 4 cycle tracks. The Placentia Avenue project. The design was complete this year, both Class 2 bicycle lanes and Class 4 cycle tracks. And then finally, the Adams Avenue Bicycle Facility Project from Fairview to Harbor, Class 2. Actually, I just said that one, sorry. The Fairview Road Class 4 project, also Class 2 buffer bike lanes between Newport and Fair. In addition, we've completed constructed active transportation improvements at Newport and Industrial Way. Mr. Sung Yang mentioned that as part of the parkway improvements, but I'd like to mention a leading pedestrian interval was also installed as part of that project for the new pedestrian crossing. At Tustin Avenue and Woodland Place, we installed bulb outs at the new pedestrian crossing as well as a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. Another project underway and some of the highlights of completion is in the process of implementing leading pedestrian intervals at 26 intersections. This will be complete by mid-June. So within this fiscal year, we've installed video detection for bicycles, improved bicycle timing at 19 intersections, and installed emergency vehicle preemption at 6 intersections, which those 6 intersections along these corridors are the remaining 6 needing emergency vehicle preemption. I will now hand it back over to Director Seth Rahman.
So thank you, Jennifer. So again, now we're talking about 23-24 CIP. So the 23-24 CIP budget meets the 5% capital asset needs scan ordinance requirement. And we have identified projects based on City Council priorities as identified in the goals and objectives. We got feedback from commissions, committees, and the community over the past year. We also have department requests for many facility improvements that are part of this CIP. And we also did our own evaluation of where the needs are and where the infrastructure needs are, and identified those projects. One of the highlights is 50% of the share of the CIP is from grants. So of that, so we have $30 million CIP, approximately $15 million, of which $10 million is through Senator Min, $1.2 million through Assemblywoman Cardi Petri Norris, $3.2 million through Supervisor Foley, and $600,000 from Federal Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program. This shows a list of all the different funding sources for the CIP that adds up to $30.5 million. And as you can see from the grant fund line, it's almost $15 million. Again, these are the various categories, again, showing in a pie chart form. Quick facts, 46 projects are recommended in the CIP, again, $30.5 million, and 15 from the grants. These are in your attachments 1, these 2 sheets. It lists all the CIP projects. I just want to highlight that Senator Min's projects that are identified with a superscript 1, the funding for those have to be finalized. We'll come back to City Council to finalize the actual amounts that will go for those projects. We'll be taking this to Parks and Community Services Commission on Thursday. So this shows all the projects. And we'll just quickly highlight the projects. As our city manager mentioned, we are looking at this CIP as a phased approach, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 are the projects that are grant funded, and we have MOE, which is maintenance of effort. Many of our granting agencies, like OCTA through Measure M program, or state through the gas tax and our MRA, they require that we maintain a minimum maintenance of effort, which means we use our own funds to implement some projects. They don't want the grant funds, the Measure M funds, to supplant the city funds. So they need us to show that we are spending our city funds on some projects, and there is a minimum every year that we have to show that we are spending. So that is a priority for us to make sure that we keep meeting that requirement and we don't lose those grant funds. The other priority is also the projects that are underway right now. We need to continue finishing those projects. An example of that is Station 2 design, Fire Station 2 or Fire Station 4 that we have a grant for that we need to continue working on. So those are some of the example projects that we need to continue working and finish off before we start new projects. So with that, for some of the phase 1 projects, we'll get started here. Again, Mr. Sangyang can lead this.
Right. Thank you, Raja. So I'd like to start off for the upcoming fiscal year, 2023-24, with the first project that you see in front of you, which is the Twinkle Park Skate Park expansion. This is approximately a $2 million project in which we received new funding through County Supervisor Katrina Foley. This encompasses the expansion of the skate park footprint and provide a new dedicated area for youth and beginner skaters. And this would add new elements such as a pump track and other interesting features as well. And you can see the photos of the current skate park in front of you. During this project, it is our intention to have community outreach and presentations throughout the design phase of this project. Next up is the Ketchum-Leibold Park expansion. We're receiving approximately $1.2 million grant through State Assembly member Kari Petrie Norris and about $300,000 in terms of per capita state grant for this project. The Ketchum-Leibold Park is proposed to be expanded in order to provide additional park features and also improvements and enhancements. These new features or enhancements will make room for a new playground, a vibrant and interesting landscaping and grounds, and also new additional elements that will contribute to the expansion, neighborhood park usage, and also new activities. Shalimar Park improvements. Part of this is part of the $10 million grant from State Senator David Min. The Shalimar Park in Westside neighborhood is definitely in need of improvements and enhancements, as well as additional park space to serve the surrounding residents and community members. This increased park area will accommodate a new dynamic playground, dynamic landscaping and grounds, and also it will feature a new commitment to an environment promoting family activities and also outings. Community outreach meetings will also be conducted for this project in order to determine and implement both short-term and long-term improvements as well. Fairview Park improvements. This includes the mesa restoration, including removal of unsuitable fill material, as you see there in the bluffs, the restoration of native habitat. It includes bluff stabilization and restoration, the bluff repair on most impacted areas, as illustrated, stabilization and restoration as well. And lastly, the Fairview Ponds, the wetlands and riparian habitat to be improved as well, and that includes a recirculation system and pump improvements. Lions Park Cafe, it's a standalone dining facility with a catering kitchen for serving meals for park visitors and community members. Again, it's a $1 million new funding through County Supervisor Katrina Foley. It's approximately 100,000 square footprint building. It will consist of a concession counter. There's also food preparation room, also warming and cooling kitchen equipment, an employee restroom as well, full-size storage room, a telecom room, and lastly, a serving and snacking deck. Our staff is currently reviewing the existing building codes and making sure that all the codes are compliant with this project. So the Tewinkle Athletic Complex improvements. This will consist of removing existing lighting at the Tewinkle Athletic Complex and replace it with energy efficient LED or light emitting diode lighting. It will include improvements to the fields to address the ongoing drainage issues that are going on, and also consist of the addition of batting cages. In addition, even though the picture is not shown, we have the Jack Hammond sports field lighting to be included as well. City streetwide and alley improvements. Major streets citywide for improvement will include Fairview Road from Adams Avenue to Fair Drive, Wilson Street, Placentia Avenue to Pacific Avenue, various residential streets, and citywide alleys will be reconstructed from asphalt pavement to fiber reinforced concrete surfaces. This is an annual project, and these are what we have in store for the upcoming fiscal year, approximately $6 million in terms of $900,000 in CIP, $2.8 million in RMRA, and 2.3 in the Measure M2 fund. And as Roger was mentioning, this is part of the MOE, or maintenance of effort requirement for this project as well. So I'll also defer back to Ms. Jennifer Rosales for the next slides. Jennifer?
Great, thank you. The next project is the Adams Avenue Pine Creek Drive intersection improvements for active transportation improvements. I talked about this as being completed in this fiscal year for the design. So this proposed additional funding is for the construction phase. We received a federal grant in the amount of $515,000 as part of the Federal Bicycle Corridor Improvement Program. We are anticipating to get construction authorization funds in June, which means we have 6 months to award the construction contract. The additional funds is due to enhanced scope of project. We now have a Class 1 bicycle facility within the project area, and then also improved pedestrian and bicycle access to Orange Coast College. We've also received $250,000 in funding from Orange Coast College for this project. The next project is funding for the construction phase of the Fairview Road improvements between Newport Boulevard and Fair Drive. This includes pavement rehabilitation and parkway concrete improvements, includes new signing and striping for the Class 4 cycle tracks. It also includes a new mid-block pedestrian crossing with pedestrian hawk signal. And this project will be financed through using the 2021 Pavement Management Relief Funds. We'll now talk about Phase 2 projects. The first one are active transportation transportation improvements. The projects in the proposed fiscal year is in the amount of $4.8 million. This includes bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure projects. It also includes the Safe Routes to School Action Plan grant that we've received. This will be part of Phase 1 since it is a grant fund. This is through a federal Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. It includes citywide bicycle rack improvements. It also includes citywide Class 2, 3, and 4 bicycle projects. It includes the citywide neighborhood traffic calming improvements that we do annually. It also includes Adams Avenue active transportation improvements between Santa Ana River to Royal Palm. This project is being implemented in several phases. Includes protected bike lanes, multi-use paths, as well as utility undergrounding. It includes the Fairview Road active transportation improvements, which I discussed as part of Phase 1, and then also implementation of the citywide bicycle wayfinding signage program. I will now hand it to our Maintenance Services Manager, Rob Ryan.
Thank you, Jennifer. The next project is Costa Mesa Country Club improvements, $700,000 in funding. As we've all heard, Costa Mesa Country Club is in need of improvements to the facilities as well as the golf courses. This is going to include reconfiguration and refurbishment of indoor and outdoor spaces. They'll hopefully provide additional public venues. It in turn would provide opportunities to generate increased revenues. The golf courses are also in need of some improvements, which include cart paths, construction new cart paths, repair and refurbishment of bunkers, and replacement of safety netting. The next project would be the Brentwood Park improvements. There's existing funding of $250,000, asking for an additional $400,000. This project aims to revitalize the park and include added and improved amenities. Some of the goals of this project would include age-appropriate equipment for 2 to 5-year-olds as well as 5 to 12-year-olds. It would include accessible equipment in those designs, as well as swings. All of these while maintaining the park as a neighborhood park. Some of the other additional upgrades can include landscaping, tree planting, adding some accessible walkways, upgrading the existing shelter, converting the existing park lighting to LED lighting, as well as other park amenities. With that, I'll turn it back over to Director Straman.
Thank you, Rob. So So some of the major projects that are currently underway, as I mentioned, the CIP, for us, we need to consider existing projects as well as future projects. These are some of the ongoing projects that we'll continue to focus on, which is Fire Station 2 reconstruction, which I mentioned earlier, Newport Boulevard improvements. This is roadway rehabilitation as well as active transportation improvements on the frontage roads, both frontage roads of Newport Boulevard between Bristol and 19th Street. We have improvements in the west side as part of the West Side Restoration Project. And then Placentia Avenue, as we mentioned, it's going to undergo rehabilitation as well as active transportation improvements. And they are starting in May of this year, but they'll continue through early part of next fiscal year. And then Mesa Del Mar circulation improvements, we are looking at opportunities to increase parking, to improve some of the neighborhood traffic control measures. We have speeding issues that we need to address in that community, so that's part of that project. And Jennifer talked about Fairview Road improvements. That the design is underway right now, but we should go into construction next fiscal year. Traffic signal at 19th Wallace, we have awarded that project, that one and the pedestrian hawk signals, and they will be underway sometime in next fiscal year. Tewinkle Lakes, the design phase is getting close to be completed now, so that's an ongoing project. West 19th Street, that's also awarded project, but the construction is coordinated with Placentia. Police Department range, that's under construction right now. We have, I think, at about 50% stage on that project, so that's well underway. Station 4, we're going to have a design meeting actually. The design is going to get underway now for Station 4 training tower. And the City Hall training room, that's also, there's a training room being designed in the basement of our City Hall, so that design is underway. So these are some of the 90 projects that we are currently working on. We also have a 5-year plan that is attachment 2 of the staff report. So the 5-year plan is based on, again, goals and priorities by the City Council and input from commissions, committees, and community. And projects that were not funded this year show up on the next year CIP, in the following year CIP as part of the 5-year plan, as well as other projects that we think down the road should be part of the CIP or in the 5-year plan. So this is a calendar for the CIP and budget. Today we are with you for the CIP presentation. Tomorrow we'll be taking this to the Finance and Pension Advisory Committee. On May 11th, we're scheduling this for Parks and Community Services Commission approval. And then Planning Commission is reviewing this on May 22nd, and they review this for determining CEQA consistency with the general plan. And then in June, we'll come back to you for formal approval. With that, we are ready to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Roger. Great presentation, the whole team. Great. You have anything to add, Jason? No? You sure? All right. Okay. Who's first? Anybody? All right. Don.
Hey, just real quick. On attachment 2, you've got $290 million worth of projects. And then attachment 3, and this is what I need to understand or want to understand, it's got 141 million of budgeted projects. And there's a column that says actual and then remaining balance. So under the budget, is that actually funds that are allocated or we have? Help me reconcile and understand that.
Yes. So the budget is the actual budget that was appropriated as part of council action. Actuals is what we spent to date.
Okay.
On the projects. And $55.6 million is what's remaining on those projects.
Okay, so these are approved council projects. Some work's been done. Okay. And then the other 149 million on the other schedule have not been approved by council, and there's been no budget assigned.
Yes.
Thank God. That's all. One other quick question. The general fund, 6.4 million, where the funding's coming from, that's essentially the can, correct? Required. Carol says I'm right for once.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Okay.
Yes, that's correct. That's
Thank
the
you.
can.
That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Any other comments?
Comments or questions?
Questions, comments, whatever you want to say.
All right, John. I'm doing my best to be as informal as possible while being polite. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much to the public department. I mean, you guys make sure our city is beautiful and pristine. I just want to give a few thank yous on some things in particular. Thank you so much for making sure our roads are one of the best in Orange County. It's a really big, high remark that we're the second best in the entire county. Particularly, I want to thank you for working on streets like Wilson Street, Placentia, and West 19th Street that for the longest time felt like been forgotten. So, the bottom of my heart, thank you for doing that. Also, thank you so much on the new trees on Placentia. I know they're still young, but they'll grow into nice big trees, and we appreciate that new greenery happening in Westside Costa Mesa. I mean, looking at the CFP project for the public, it's really easy to see that Costa Mesa is a very loved city. I mean, we have three different political entities: the county of Orange, the state assembly, and the state senate, giving us all grant funding to improve the quality of life for our Costa Mesa residents. So I think while we do have a lot of things on the budget, a lot of it's only being done because we have good friends in multiple levels of government that truly want to see us improve lives for Costa Mesa residents. I want to quickly touch a base on a bit of the things that were mentioned, and then I'll let my council peers ask their questions or give their comments. First of all, I think when it comes to Kitchen Level Park, first of all, I want to thank our Assemblywoman Connie Pichinores for giving us that funding. If there's any way for us to extend that budget down the corridor of Victoria, I know there's some ideas of perhaps making a more greener space in the corner of Pomona and Victoria with that money. I'd be happy to see that moving forward. I know that money was designated for Kitchen Level Park, but that whole corridor needs some improvements. So if we can stretch that money out, that would be perfect. On Shalimar, I'm really happy to see Senator Dave Min give us money for that. I think the most important thing for me as a council member for that community is just having community input meetings. I think that community has a park. They don't really feel as much ownership of that park because they didn't really feel how much of a say in it. So for me, it's really critical that more than the dollar amount we invest, it's the community input we get. I know we have a great team that will do that, but that's the one thing I want to talk about on Shalimar. Happy both those projects are going to be done on the first phase. And then with Fairview, I want to see us use the most bang for our buck. So obviously we have a lot of things we can do with Fairview. It's a really important piece of real estate for Costa Mesa. Really unique in that sense, but whatever we think is the best bang for the buck in terms of preservation of that site, that's what I want to see us use the money for. Back to the phases, I appreciate the honesty of telling us what has to come first, what has to come second. I know that most things in the first phase are things that have funding tied from other government sources and entities, so it makes sense why those have to be prioritized. But what I will say is I want to thank staff for adding Brentwood Park and augmenting it, and also adding the golf course. There are two things that we've seen pop up these past few months that the community has kind of mentioned. So I'm happy to see that we're at least trying to find ways to focus on them after we address the things we have to address. Another thing I want to say is I want us to continue looking at opportunities to add more medians in the city of Costa Mesa. I've had residents on both Placentia and South Coast Drive mention they want to see medians. So if at some point we can just give me an update on how we would acquire those medians or the process just to share with those residents, I'd be really grateful because they do make our city more beautiful and they do keep us safe. And then finally, the thing I just want to end with is I think for the last 4 years, I have felt a wish that we had spent more focus on parks. I know we heard a lot today about Brentwood Park in particular, but I know in my district, both Shalimar Park and Kitchen Level Park have been in dire need of more reinvestment. It looks like half of our CIP budget really is park focused. So I would applaud any effort we can take to focus on parks in particular. I know in the past we put more effort on ATP projects and they're very important, but just looking at the past 4 years, there's a definite lack of investment in park spaces, and I think we should be focusing on that for our residents at the moment in time. With that said, again, I applaud you for the transparency. I applaud you for prioritizing those two parks in my district that need attention, and I applaud you for bringing in phase 2 the golf course and Brentwood Park, because again, those are things that have to be done, and they will get done, but we need to make sure we do the things that are funded first. But thank you, guys.
Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, yeah.
I'll go next.
Drea.
So I'm going to be pretty brief because I think we've talked about this in the study session we had related to grant funding, and then also the study session specifically, or excuse me, the strategic planning session where we talked a little bit more about our priorities. But I think that this does just a really excellent job of encapsulating all the things that we've talked about over the last year. I would dare say even the last couple of years. I'm looking at the Fairview Park Road, or excuse me, Fairview Park. Now I'm going to say park at the end of every sentence. The Fairview Road Improvement Project, and that's one that I think really speaks to Councilmember Harper's point about how do these things evolve, right? It came out of a committee meeting. It was a discussion that it was part of the active transportation plan. We set aside some funding for you to do some of Fairview. It's been an evolving process. And now this is $650K set aside to bring it to fruition. So I think the thing that for the public to understand is these things evolve. There is no waving a magic wand and now there's funding and then it's going to get built tomorrow. Often these projects start with council comments, council ideas, things that come out of committees, things that come out of the public, and we get to a point where we can actually do them. And that's dependent on all the things that staff is working on and all of the barriers and challenges that we have in terms of finding the funding, finding the people, getting the contracts in place. So I think this is a really, really excellent presentation too. I try not to keep a lot of paper. I don't get a binder every week. I try to do it all online, but lately I've been saving these presentations because it's actually really helpful to refer back to. So yeah, thank you for doing this. I like the little icon in the corner too that illustrates what the funding source is. My one quick question was on Fairview Road. It says the project will be financed through the 2021 Pavement Management Relief Funds. So I was surprised we're able to dip back into funds that are several years old. Can you say more about the Pavement Management Relief Funds?
So that's actually using, I think they use the COVID money, the OCTA, and distributing it to different cities in the county. So our share of allocation was, $350,000. So it has to go through a process to get it appropriated, and we are in the final stage of that process. So it takes some time for OCTA to get to the cities to award those monies, and then from us to working with the state to formally appropriate that. So it takes some working around, and we are getting there right now.
Thank you. That actually proves the point that I was making about the evolution of projects over time. I agree with the phasing in terms of phase 1 and phase 2. We have to spend the grant money. We have to prioritize those funds. There's a lot of strings attached to them. And I think recognizing that phase 2 is things that are nice to have that we will certainly do if we can, but that unfortunately cannot be the city's priority in this moment. So really well done job, Raja, and your team for pulling this all together. And I'm actually sort of shocked that I don't have more comments. So that just proves my point. Thanks.
Arliss?
Thank you. I'm shocked also that you didn't have more comments, Andrea. Go. Okay, I'll go. I'll pick up, and actually I want to echo the comment. I noticed the icons on the PowerPoint. I thought that was really, really helpful. We've come a long way with these PowerPoints since 4 years ago, and it helps a lot. It's really meaningful. So thank you for that. So digging into the phasing a little bit more, the presentation included phase 1 projects that have some sort of time schedule requirement to them, the phase 2 projects, and then you highlighted a selection of our existing 90 projects. How does that phasing work with the projects that are either already in process or have been funded for several years but haven't started? Is there, I guess I want to know that projects that have been funded a couple of years ago aren't going to get pushed beyond sort of the new phase 2 projects. What is the plan for that?
Again, Councilmember Reynolds, we go through the projects list to see, and also our staffing, to see how we can phase the projects. There are some projects that haven't started. I'll give an example, which is
34 of
the
them.
Climate Action and Adaptation Plan hasn't started, right? But we are in the process of securing an energy sustainability manager, and when that happens, that project will be one of the first projects that will be on that person's radar to initiate and work on. So as we get the staffing, we'll add more projects to the list. The ones that are already in the pipeline, we already have staffing and we know who's working on them, and they keep moving forward towards completion. So and on top of that, we recently we are procuring services of consulting firms to help us out in administering some of these projects. We checked with the granting authority, the state especially, where we got Senator Min's money and Assemblymember Carty Beatty Norris's money, and they said consulting services are reimbursable as part of their contract. So we will be using that to get some services to help us out on some of those projects. So with variety of these sources, we'll try to move forward. That's why our CIP this year, while it's $30 million, if you take the grant monies away, it's $15 million. It's kind of smaller than our typical CIPs from the past, because we want to make sure that we put our focus on the grant projects, get them done, and also on the projects that are currently underway.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think between now and the final budget, I know we don't usually put schedules in the budget, but a couple of the things that have often come up in the budget discussions is both clarifying when a budget is design or construction or both, making sure that that's very clear. And then I think it would be very helpful for us and for the community to provide some sort of calendar, and I know there's so many things that affect it too, but sort of what is our initial estimate for the phasing of projects, especially those that have been in the queue. There's some pre-COVID projects that we haven't started yet for good reason, right? But folks are going to want to know how we fit those in. And thank you. You touched on one of my questions, which was how are we what strategies do we have on sort of the staff capacity issue? And I think you've heard a lot of support from this council on being creative about, addressing those staffing concerns, especially where we do have additional grant funding. There's two documents that we've talked about that I think would normally, and in the future would inform a lot of the CIP development. That's the open space master plan, and then we've discussed facilities assessment. What is the status of the open space master plan? And then my question, maybe we'll start with Raja. This facilities assessment, what would be sort of the time frame for that, where we'd have sort of a more structured view of what facility needs we have?
So the facility assessment needs study, that's something that we'll undertake as soon as we hire our deputy director for facilities and sustainability. So once we have that person on board, that's again, we'll definitely take that up. That's the timeline. So I don't have a timeline for that, but we're waiting for that appointment. And we haven't started the recruitment yet. So that's my...
Is it reasonable to expect that something like that would be done sort of within a year, so it would inform the next budget cycle? I don't know. Is that a 3-year, a 1-year project or a 4-year project?
It could be a 1-year project, but when we get started with that is the key. We'll definitely come back to council when we have to award a consultant contract for that particular project. So you'll know when it's awarded, and once we get started, it's definitely within a year of that award, we'll have that.
Got it. Okay. And where are we with the open space master plan?
Just for clarity, and I know I've been calling it the Open Space Master Plan, but it's the Open Space and Recreational Program Master Plan, so it's all encompassing. It's not focused just on parks or projects. It's also about programs. I've been contacting or in contact with all of the major players. There's just a couple of things that we're finishing up, and then we'll get it on the schedule for a joint meeting with the PACS Commission and the City Council. So hopefully in the next month, we'll have that on a date for everyone to look forward to.
Okay. Part of that included sort of this park access assessment. Is that piece done? I may assume it is if we're close to receiving the draft.
There's been changes submitted, cleanup items. As you can imagine, when you take 3 years away from doing a master plan update, there was quite a bit that either got done or accomplished or repurposed. So there were a bunch of changes that had to get updated, working with Public Works and their staff. So those have been done and submitted to the consultant. I just need to see where they're at in terms of those updates.
Okay, I'll follow up with you after the meeting. I was really interested in that piece and hoping that we'd have that to inform this budget cycle. Question on a couple of the items in the budget proposal here. So we've had a lot of issues with the Hawk signal on Placentia and 20th. And I saw funds in that for several years out, but what's the plan in the interim? Do we have funds to fix that? Because I know I've been stuck at that crosswalk a few times, and it's a very scary situation to be in.
Yes, Councilmember Reynolds, the Placentia and 20th intersection, it's more of a flashing kind of beacon. And the pedestrian push-button housing was damaged recently, so it's been stuck on it's been programmed to be on an auto flash since the push buttons aren't working. The signal maintenance contractor has ordered the new parts, and they are supposed to arrive by the end of this week. So I'm hoping they do arrive so they can be installed within the next week.
Okay, so we have the funding to fix that in the meantime.
Yes, we have the funding to fix it in the meantime.
What was the funding for a few years out? It was $175,000 for a few years out. What's that to do?
So, Councilman Reynolds, actually, the funding was to upgrade that, to add flashing beacons and other minor improvements. But looking at that location, we would rather treat it similar to Placentia Wallace signal. So it might have to go to a full signal down the road if at some point when we take that up.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that there's a short-term fix.
Sorry, 19th and Wallace. I said Placentia Wallace. It should be 19th and Wallace.
Oh, I understood you somehow. I was thinking about that too. Interesting. Okay. Whatever happened to the river channel discussions, turning those into bike lanes?
You're talking about the Santa Ana River channel or Paularino?
No, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
the Paularino channel. Yeah.
So at this point, they are in the county radar. We did have some discussions. County had a presentation on their master plan of active transportation plan, actually county active transportation plan, and they did put those projects as one of the down the road priorities, but we don't have timeline on that yet at this point.
Okay. So it's not on the horizon.
It's not in the horizon right now.
Okay, that's too bad. And then bus stops. We've heard some comments previously about bus stops. I think bus stop riders are people we often don't hear from, and bus stops is sort of a shared responsibility between us and OCTA. What is the cost of whose responsibility is it, and what is the cost of adding a bench and a shelter to a bus stop, approximately?
So the bus stops are actually the OCTA provides only the sign for the bus stop. Any other amenities that we do is the city's responsibility. So the city is responsible for any shelter, bench, trash, all that. And recently we did 3 shelters with grant from OCTA, and it's about $30,000 per stop to do a shelter and with a bench and associated amenities.
Just for the equipment?
Just for the an install price is $30,000.
Got it. Okay.
And we have our franchise agreement is expiring next February or next April, I think. So next April. So we'll be going back to re-advertising that, and we can look at opportunities for increasing or providing more shelters at that point, or modifying the shelters too.
Okay. I was just got some numbers from OCTA a while back and learned that less than 40% of our bus stops have any kind of shelter. And given how much hotter it's getting, there's been some new research coming out about the health impacts of that. So very interested in what we can do in that area, especially when we can actually generate some revenue from advertising at the stops. Okay. And then I saw we have Newport Boulevard, 17th to 19th. On the 5-year plan, there's 9.3 million for beyond 5 years. But then we have this Caltrans project happening. What is that project? What is the 9.3 million for?
Councilor Reynolds, actually, that's an old project that probably should no longer be there. We talked about, that was the widening of Newport Boulevard in that stretch.
Right.
So that's the funding for the construction phase of that project.
Okay, so maybe that can be removed given
That could be
Caltrans's
removed.
work?
Yes.
Okay, great. Save some money. Okay. There was just a couple notes on things that I also maybe that could be removed. We got a comment about the fencing, a budget item for fencing along Placentia. I suspect, that was a few years out, I suspect that won't be part of the master plan update. That's something that we can probably remove from the 5-year plan. I saw we have $1.1 million over 5 years for neighborhood entry signs. That seems to me a lower priority than a lot of the other things that are sort of on the list and not on the list. I would love to see that money reallocated to neighborhood traffic improvements. We continue to get more and more comments from community members about speeding in their neighborhood, ways to make the neighborhoods safer. So that's maybe a reallocation of funds that I would suggest based on community input and need. And then, let's see. So when we had the grant discussion a month ago, 2 months ago or so now, I had shared that sort of my highest priority would be really trying to close the gap in access to green space. We've had a lot of discussion about parks. There's a lot of good funding for parks. I just want us to be mindful that that's all money for existing parks, and we have a lot of people in our community who still don't have access to parks in their neighborhoods. And that's an equity issue. It's an environmental justice issue. Access to park space is something that we know is a huge impact on physical and mental health. We've had lots of discussions, and we're doing a lot of good work to close that gap by expanding parks like we're doing planning to do at Ketchum-Leibolt and Shalimar. So as I was going through the budget, I was really thinking about where are we closing the gap. That's why I really want to see the analysis in the Open Space Master Plan with the new title. And then, I want us to be mindful of the sort of historical inequities in our inner city layout and in the budgeting process, right? There are very clear patterns where people have private open space, where the parks exist in our city, where green space is blocked from community members or has been privatized by fences and membership fees. People have been discouraged or unwelcome to share in the green space in other neighborhoods. We sort of heard some of those comments tonight, which disappointed me quite a bit, actually. And certain communities in the city have not had representatives on this council in the past, or have not been welcome in these chambers. So all of those things, where we have parks, where we have plans that we're able to submit for funding, these are all sort of part of a history that continues to perpetuate some of those inequities, and I'm focused, and I really want to see sort of a plan going forward. I think the Open Space Master Plan can be a launch point for that, but a plan going forward to correct some of those historical issues so that every kid that grows up in Costa Mesa can walk to a park, that every senior can walk to a park. Not everyone can drive to a park, not everyone has access to a car. That's one of the reasons, I think one of the focuses on active transportation is helping to close the gap in terms of accessing parks that are not in people's neighborhoods. So just trying to share a little bit of where my headspace is on CIP priorities here. On that note, we had previously created, and it's on the 5-year plan, a West Side Park Development Fund, I think specifically in response to the issues that I've shared. I saw that we didn't include any funds, or we're not including any funds this year for that, but to me it seems like a perfect opportunity to include some funds, because that's building a bucket of funds to help us acquire land to build a park. So it's putting some extra money we have into that fund, even though we're not actually going to build something next year because we still have to find the land. That seems like a good opportunity to put some funds in that place. just keep building that bank so that when we have an opportunity, we can build a new park for a community that doesn't already have one. I'd love to see, and I don't know if this is CIP or programming, but just a note for the budget, sort of what are solutions in the interim for these communities, and some are on the west side, some are on the east side, there's some in the north of the city, that communities that don't already have parks. What can we do creatively in terms of pop-up parks or pop-up events? We've had the rec ban. There are other strategies that other cities have taken to try to close that gap, even if it's on an interim basis, and provide ways to facilitate community building in communities. And then one thing I think I mentioned, one of the challenges I've learned over the last few years is when there are grant opportunities, if we don't already have a plan or we don't already have a concept, it's really hard to apply for those grants. And so I'd love to see us have, again, I don't know if this is CIP or other budget items, but a fund to even just start some conceptual designs for some new ideas for parks. So from as small as pocket parks, Councilmember Chavez mentioned, like the linear park along Victoria, to as big as the covering the 55 freeway, right? Can we create a cover there and do that? We can't even pursue funds for that if we don't have a visual or a concept to have a conversation around. So having some budget, I think that's just a landscape architect to do some drawings, right? It can't be that much, but I'd love to at least take the first step to start potentially bringing some of these items to life. I mentioned the cover and benches at bus stops. I think this is a really important issue for folks in our community who in some ways are some of the most vulnerable. I was hoping it'd be cheaper to do benches and shelters, but maybe with the contract coming up, I think we have a lot of bike racks in stock and unspent money on bike racks. So I would be in favor of reallocating the $50K for bike racks towards bus stops and trying to move down that path to get some more shelters at bus stops. And then lastly, I was a little bit surprised. I understand why, but I was a little bit surprised given our council priorities that there was no budget for items in the energy and sustainability category. I understand that position's not staffed now, but this may be another opportunity. I mean, this was a clear priority for our council. I think we're going to be doing the environmental justice component as part of our planning. It seems like an opportunity to, again, to add some funds to that bucket so that when we do bring someone in, they've got some funds to work with. So I'd like to see us align some budget with our priority on that issue.
Councilmember Reynolds, just on the energy, so we have an existing project for the CAP project, the Climate Action Adaptation Plan. So that's rolls over into this next year. So that money would be available for starting that project. In addition, I know we have monies for Community Choice Energy Program. We set aside some money for that, so that's still in the budget. That could be allocated for something, and we have some money for charging stations too. That's carrying over. So there are some funds that are in the budget.
Yeah, thank you. And you reminded me about the CCE budget. So I'd be interested in moving that over or expanding the climate action and adaptation plan budget. I think maybe those two could be folded together as well. The other item sort of within that category, I think it might officially fit in a different bucket, but it's very related, is funding for the tree program. I thought we were supposed to start an annual tree program this year, and it looked like that got shifted back. But it'd be great to see funds for that tree program. Several of us have commented on tree cover and shade. So important cooling effect, important wellness effect, and they're beautiful. So I'd love to see some funding for trees.
Yeah, we are trying to incorporate some of the tree funding as part of street projects. So we're taking advantage of the funds that we have to pay for these trees.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do you want to go? Jeff.
Sure, Lauren?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Well, as was mentioned by my colleagues, I do want to thank staff. I know this is a heavy lift to do what I think is a lot of balancing here. As I mentioned to the city manager earlier today, I mean, this is a good problem to have. We've got a lot of grant money and very exciting projects. But it's really, truly been a collaboration of staff with engineering and maintenance and parks and public works and transportation. So I want to thank you all for putting this together. I'm not going to start by talking about Brentwood Park. You probably all are sick of hearing it. I'll wrap up with that later. But I did have a question about the tennis center improvements. What is the scope, or at least the proposed scope, for that $320,000?
Again, Mayor Pro Tem Harlan. So the 320,000, as I mentioned, that's part of the Senator Min's money allocation. So that there's an asterisk next to it, or there's a subscript next to that. So it's not a final number yet. The initial thought is definitely do the LED upgrades. Right. So that's the first important project. We know there are other needs for tennis center, which includes the restroom and upgrading the shade structure in that area and provide other amenities too. So we have some funding from I think from the previous fiscal year that could be used for that, and other than that,
There was court resurfacing as well, was one of the big components. I think that was funded last year, was to resurface all 12 courts.
Okay. That's good to know. I would agree with, I think it was Mr. Huffman who had mentioned putting more investment in that. I think it's one of our city assets that does generate revenue. It obviously has a very passionate and loyal customer base. We've got RFP out for the operator, so it would be good in the coming year to make that investment there. I'll just talk about Brentwood Park, why not? It's nothing new. I mean, I've been talking about this for quite a long time. The only thing I really want to say about it is, while it may seem uncomfortable to people to hear opposing viewpoints, whether you're passionately in favor of the project or you wholly oppose it or you have some kind of lukewarm, tepid response, that's the nature of our community planning. And I agree with one of my neighbors, Kara, that we need to do more communication as this process unfolds. And I will be leading that as far as trying to make sure that we reach people in my neighborhood. I have no expectation that this will change from the character of the park. It's a neighborhood park. We've made these investments elsewhere in the city, Jordan Park, Tanninger, Perez Park, which is around the corner, which incidentally, by my observation and several other people, it is a highly used, well-loved little park, and it's one that people get to by biking or walking. So when we talk about walkability and our improvements there, you have to have something to walk to, and that is proven to be the case there, and I would expect that would be the same thing for Brentwood Park. Any improvements we would do there would be people within the neighborhood walking or biking there. So I am very pleased to see that part of our budget. I understand it would be part of the phase 2 implementation. I think that's prudent and necessary, and I look forward to the next steps moving that project forward.
Lauren?
Yes, thank you. So I do want to thank staff for a wonderful presentation. I know a lot of work went into this. I know there was a lot of back and forth. I actually was speaking to the city manager about some of the concerns that I had that I wanted to see. And so I'd like to bring one of those up. I noticed on Fairview, we did cover a lot of ground there, and there's an improvement project, but I'd like to know, where are we at with placing a signal at Belfast? There's some safety concerns there. I probably have to say that the last person that probably had the biggest safety concern was the one that was upside down due to the frequent accidents that we have there. It's a very, it's a concerning intersection. So if someone could help me out with that, and maybe if we can get this on the list, that'd be great.
Thank you, Councilmember Gamaros. To add a new traffic signal at Fairview Belfast would be about 600,000, and we can certainly add it if the city council wanted us to add that project.
Do I ask the city council if they would add that project? Because I'd like to see it added.
Can you put it in the budget and then we'll vote on it one way or the other?
So
Yes.
we'll add it and bring it back as part of the budget adoption process.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Other than that, once again, thank you, everybody. You did a wonderful job, and that's all I have. Everything was covered.
Okay. So it's down to me? All right. Anyway, so I just want to say that I'm very proud of all of the work that we do. We have a wonderful Public Works Department. Raja, you're a great leader and you've got a great team, and it shows every day when you're driving around the city. And I said my piece at the last meeting about compared to other cities, including, other first-class cities like New Orleans. I mean, the difference is like night and day, as you know. And so I was just at the Travel Costa Mesa meeting today, and we had the Travel Costa Mesa board there, and they echoed that. It's like everybody, sometimes we take for granted what we have, the smooth streets, the lack of graffiti, but they don't. The business people don't. The people that, and the people that know the difference. What they were talking about a lot in the meeting today at Travel Costa Mesa is how much different and better the city is now than it was 20 years ago. And you hear so many people talk about how their cities are deteriorating, and our city is going in the right direction, and it's because of a consistent effort. It's like the first public works project I ever voted on was the design for the Broadway traffic calming. And I remember, and I moved to continue it, and all the other council members got mad at me. And then but we continued it, and then we passed it at the next meeting. And then it's like, when you go hiking, there's this place called I think it's called Red Hill at Peters Canyon. And you're hiking up that hill, and you're taking a step and a step and a step, and sometimes you think you're barely moving. And then you look back when you get to the top of the hill, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm at the top of this hill. I can't believe how far I went. Sometimes I feel that way as it pertains to public works, because you're climbing up a hill, and sometimes it feels like you're barely moving, but then you look back and you think, look at all of the medians we've done. Look at all of the alleys we've done. Look at all of the roads we've paved. Look at all of the park improvements. Jack Hammett, you could go on and on and on. So thank you for everything you do. Just a couple of suggestions and questions and ideas. We talked about Shalimar Park, and I thought, I was looking at your graphics there, your photos, and I thought it was really cool how you've got a photo of the kids playing street hockey. Now, one thing that occurred to me, and I don't know if this is something that even Manny would want to do, or if it's something that is even possible, but when we talk about expanding Shalimar Park, that street is really closed for at least through traffic, and I don't know how much it's used by the locals. Could we expand Shalimar Park into the street? Could we reconfigure the street and make the actual street real estate more available for kids to play?
So, Mayor Stevens, that's some of the ideas that we will explore as part of our committee outreach. We need to maintain some minimum requirements for fire access.
Right.
So we need to make sure of that. So yeah, if there are opportunities to expand further into the parkway or into the street. Again, this is a narrow lot. And we have adjacent driveways too, for the properties. We want to make sure that we're not impacting them also. So there are some considerations that we have to look into, but definitely there are some ideas that we can explore.
Just something to think about. Like
Yes.
I said, I don't even know if Manny supports that, but I was just thinking about it. Okay, so I was happy to see that there's $150,000 set aside for Balearic Park, the blacktop there, and it is in need of improvement, and I'm glad to see it's moving forward. I get a lot of comments about it from the neighbors. Pickleball, is that going there? Pickleball, you think?
definitely, yeah. There are some thoughts, ideas.
We've evaluated the site, and I've heard that people don't like playing pickleball on blacktop, but we will definitely evaluate that as a site for the blacktop.
Well, right,
for sure.
right. But I mean, I'm talking about like just I mean, it might cost more than $150,000, and that's something we could talk about. But I'm talking about like doing a pickleball court there, like a pickleball court and a half-court basketball or something like that. There's a lot of room there, and there's a lot of, you know, it's so funny. I was listening to, respectfully, I mean, I loved all the comments about Brentwood Park, but I got to thinking about Balearic Park and how, you know, literally every weekend people descend from goodness knows where. I have no idea where the folks come that come to Balearic Park. Now, there is, to be fair, a good amount of parking there, and that was one of the issues with Brentwood Park. But I mean, I've lived there now for 23 years, and the people in the neighborhood have no issues with the use of that park by people that are outside the neighborhood. And I know it's a little bit apples and oranges because that's not really a neighborhood park. As I said, it has parking lots and stuff like that. But, you know, it can be fun to have people from outside of the neighborhood come into your neighborhood. They're not all bad, you know. Okay. I just want to socialize this. I've talked to Raja about it. I want to make sure I've said it publicly to give my council members an opportunity to either comment on it. Don't need to do it now, but maybe mention it to Raja if they like it or they don't like it. We're doing this wayfinding sign project, which I think is excellent. And I was thinking that it might be fun. We have about, and the public might like it, is we have about, I think, 15 or 20 distinct neighborhoods in the city. And to have like neighborhood identity signs. And if you want to know an example, go to Alhambra. If you just look up Alhambra neighborhood street signs, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So the theory would be, it'd be like a sign that says, as you're entering the lower birds, it's just a sign that says the lower birds. Same thing, upper birds, you know, whatever. Mesa Del Mar, College Park, whatever the case may be. And just have some kind of neighborhood pride signs. So, like I said, I'm socializing that for the purpose of getting feedback from everybody. Of course, I was happy to see that the golf course is in there and is becoming more prominent in our discussions. It made it on the PowerPoint, which is a big deal. I just want to make sure that I'm not saying you don't know this, but make sure that we remember that there's really at least 3 legs to that stool in terms of funding. So we've got what the city can contribute. We've also got what Mesa Verde Partners can contribute, and also what a potential third-party vendor, food and beverage vendor, can contribute. And so what I'd like to, I was at the golf course the other day, and I was meeting with Danny. We were meeting with Danny Lane. Jeff was there too. And one of the ideas, it was just an idea that actually it was Commissioner Tabor that brought it up. And forget about the numbers, but this is just a concept. He said, what if we sold 500 memberships for $10,000? Just think about this. It's $10,000 and you get lifetime golf. That would raise $5 million like that. Now, the numbers don't, if you really figure it out, the numbers maybe they don't play out or pencil out, but something like that where we could, you know, raise money from the golfers by providing a program for the golfers that could raise money that could be used for capital improvement. So that's, I guess, the 4th leg of the stool, right? There's the golfers themselves, the Mesa Verde Partners, and also a potential vendor, and then, of course, the city. So there's a lot of people that are invested in that, and we shouldn't have to shoulder the funding load of those improvements ourselves, is my point. I don't have anything else. Thank you. It's really excellent. And plus, the other thing, too, is thank you for your presentations, but as I think it was Arliss said, the PowerPoints are really, I mean, we're really getting good. It's very content rich, and I will say, just like Andrea, I will save this. I'm going to put it under my pillow, and I'm not going to do that. I don't want to lie to you, but I will save it. Thank you very much. Anything else? Anyone want to take a second bite at the apple? Anything more from Kim? Lorianne? Anything more from the staff?
Mayor, could I make one request?
Yes.
Yesterday was the 60th anniversary of the sinking of the Thresher, the United States nuclear submarine. My significant other's father died on that ship, so I would appreciate it if we could adjourn the meeting in memory of that 60th anniversary.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, we adjourn in memory of the folks who perished, honor in memory of the folks who perished on the Thresher. We're adjourned.